commodity on first pick, because it doesn't mean that she has to be a support. You can always transition and change things up throughout the draft and throw your opponent off. And the way that the hero can itemize can be very different. Like you said, the Sonico core build-up, you can always just grab a reliable Lotus Orb, Greaves. You can change it as you go. And having a hero that flexible who can offer so much to the game, to the team, is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, so going forward, just overall her utility, of course, comes up now and then again. Do you think we can count on continuing to see Naga in not necessarily the very first priority, but in the higher priorities in terms of the drafting for most teams?
Definitely against the Western teams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We might not see it in this match,
right?
But on the Western teams, it could throw a lot of these other teams off. Yeah.
Okay. Winter, why do you think that is, that we're seeing that regional difference between the Western teams and then the Eastern teams? I mean, why is Naga not as popular with the Eastern teams? Because the utility just on paper sounds great, right? Anyone would like extra time to figure out when you want to fight the best.
I think it's mainly because it's not as easy to utilize the hero to his fullest potential. I feel he's one of the kind of heroes where he's strong, but only at the right hands. And he's particularly strong with, like what Ben said, when Secret pick it or when EG pick it. And the rest of the teams, I mean, when they pick the hero, it's a different effect. It's not the same as when these two teams utilizes the hero. So I feel the main thing is like the two teams have been more experienced at utilizing Naga as a support initiating style, like the utility style. Maybe the Chinese teams are more experienced at using it as a carry position, so they don't really understand as much as how to utilize it to its fullest potential as a support position. That's why they don't prioritize him so much. I mean, her so much as a hero. That might be one of the reasons, I feel. So they are just forced to ban it when they are playing against the stronger Western teams, which is obviously a limitation in the draft when you have to do that.
But that's just a kind of result of regional differences.
Yeah.
At one point, right? Just if you start playing one thing a lot more often, even if the other region knows it, if you haven't played against it as much, why not?
I mean, you can sort of compare it to Ember in that sense, because the Chinese teams have been much more. They play Ember much more in their games, and they understand the hero much better, itemization wise and playstyle wise. That's why you have that stat when we were discussing, like, I think yesterday or the day before, where it was.
By the end of day 2 or the start of day 3, it was like 7-1 for Embers on Chinese teams, and then 1-8 for Embers.
Yeah, I mean, it could possibly be some of the things like that with the Naga, where the Western teams is better at using the Naga, and the Chinese teams are not so good at using the support Naga, not the carry Naga.
It is something you need to respect, though. In the past, a lot of the Eastern teams would look over something like Wisp, and it came back to really bite them on the butt.
Yeah,
So
I mean, back to the Wisp point as well, Dakota. It was like every team in China at that point doesn't really pick or ban the hero. But when it came to TI, everyone was like looking at the Western teams. All the Western teams were picking the hero. And it's mainly because of regional difference as well, because the teams that use, like, you can pick the hero. I mean, of course, the Chinese team can pick the hero, but in their regional tournaments, they don't use it as much. So the understanding and the execution of the hero isn't as good as compared to the Western teams.
They're not using it in like scrims or any of that when they're training with their other teams locally. They don't know what it's like to go against a high caliber Wisp at the time, or maybe now a high caliber support / core Naga. So it's going to be interesting how they're going to be able to perform against those Western teams with that lack of experience.
Yeah, and that's something we've touched upon. I think that's been the running theme of TF5 so far, is adaptation. Who can adapt the quickest, whether it's between 2 games alone or from day to day. Well, for now, we're about to find out. Vici Gaming versus Newbie. Do we have something new from each team? Is it just going to be butting heads right end game? We are in draft of game number 1, Vici on Dire and Newbie on Radiant.
The rematch.
The rematch, yeah, it is a rematch from the finals. To an extent, right? Just the names, if we put them together, it is a rematch. Quite a few differences here and there. Mainly, also, it's not the final of a TI.
There's also a TI2 rematch today, too, I believe. Navi go against IG. Not quite as hype as it once was, but it is happening, technically.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, at this point, we were talking about, I mean, even just for players, we have 6 teams with players who have been at a TI final. So there's definitely, if we're looking at the history, there's definitely some running rivalries here. But the draft somewhat underway.
And we see here, like, Newbie just picked Tidehunter. Tidehunter is a hero that we've seen banned a couple of times, but I'm not sure if we've seen it played on the mainstream.
I saw IG picking the hero one time yesterday.
I don't think it was on our stream, though, right? I think we were just watching
not
one of
on
the
our
other
stream.
streams, yeah.
But it's not very popular, and again, Newbie tend to draw from a lot of elements from last year, just because it's simply what they're more comfortable with. So it's a little strange to see Tide on the last match stats up there.
Give me Bounty Hunter. No, that would just be my guess right now. Yeah, I could
Quite a
look
few
like
others
a
open.
good Vanna White, but yeah, there's so many options available here, and got to get rid of the blue pony man.
I think it's good if Vici tries to look for a Wisp pick, I think, maybe in their like second pick or their third phase, just because, as we said, newbie, they're more old school than new school. And Winter Wyvern, I think, is a very new school support that I think I've seen them play a couple of times, but as you said, if they haven't played against Wisp that much, and if they haven't played with Winter Wyvern that much, I think that's an excellent tool to take down newbie and gain over one.
What about the clock pick this early? I mean, does he really deserve to be this high in priority?
Yeah, I talked about this before. It's a Chinese versus Chinese matchup. They view it as a counter towards the gyro, the blade mail clockwork. If you have a good game, you just hook in, and it's sort of a soft counter because gyro can obviously solve it by getting more priority on making a BKB earlier. So, but most of the players we've seen in the tournament has prioritized getting more greedy builds, like getting the SNY, getting a Helm of Dom, so you farm faster. So maybe if the clock has a good game, he would actually force the gyro to build into a much earlier BKB.
If you were in their shoes, would you prioritize the Clockwork or the Razor as an anti-gyro pick?
I think it depends on your team. If you feel much more comfortable, because they are opening. If you open your draft Quap plus Razor, you're showing more or less your position 1 and 2 heroes, so it's much less flexible compared to the Clockwork. Obviously, you can still run Queen of Pain on offlane, but it's less chance for that to happen. So I think options are more open if you actually open with Queen of Pain plus Clockwork rather than Queen of Pain plus Razor.
Plus, they're taking away that option from Ice, and clearly they're targeting a bit at him. They removed the Tusk comfort pick that he's been using a lot, plus his Brood, which he had a good performance with earlier, and now that they personally take the Clockwork away, it's just one less option for.
So that's the Dragon Knight that we were discussing about earlier. Goes to newbie, and this Queen is more likely to go towards the safe lane now. So the 3 cores of newbie already shown towards Vici Gaming, Queen of Pain, Clock, and Dragon Knight. It already signals to Vici Gaming that newbie wants to go aggressive from the get-go and wants to take towers. They're not interested in sitting back and taking the game slow. That's usually what you want when you play gyro. So they're not going to play into what Vici Gaming have.
I'm actually surprised to see them ban AA, just because you don't actually know where they're running the Queen of Pain. And if they do want to pick up a Dragon Knight, and if a Queen is going to be their safe lane carry, they don't really have that much late game. And all you need to do is stall their pushes. Sand King has been a popular hero to turn to. AA in the past, but not so much this tournament. It's usually banned out.
I think AA has been picked by newbie. Newbie is like only one of the few teams that actually pick AA, and against like a hero that has healing potential, or like in this instant there's a Dazzle, and you yourself been talking about you are surprised that team hasn't been picking Axe or AA more against the Grave. So that could be the reason why VG is taking out the AA, because they are worried that newbie might actually go down that route. And it's a good combination. It's a very old school combination, in fact, with the Clockwork. You hook someone, set up with the AA, Ice Blast opens a lot of ganking opportunities.
VG Gaming actually did that yesterday in their matchup that I got to personally cast, and then on top of the Clockwork and AA, they also had like a Bounty Hunter and a Storm. It was like an all-out assault. They were just finding kills all over the place and then having these ways to quickly initiate, close the gap, and finish them off.
This is like a draft from last year, though, with the Sand King pickup.
Yes, I think it's more likely going to be a FY, like a support Sand King, since they have a very strong lane support in Dazzle. Unlike the last game when we were casting, it was CM plus Sand King, so the Sand King would more or less be on the offlane. But this game, with what Vici have, it's a Dazzle plus Sand King. So definitely the Sand King has a lot of room to jungle and just focus on getting that early blink against the push timing that newbie has right now. So they're going to be even... I think this pick is in general mostly targeted towards the Sand King, because Sand King you want to play as greedy as possible in the jungle, and Bounty Hunter could be the one to actually mess things up and or steal your experience while you are jungling. So I think it's a really good pick towards the Sand King. So even newbie are expecting the Sand King to be a greedy support pickup from Vici.
Well, I mean, Dakota, as you were mentioning yesterday, they went for something similar with the Bounty Hunter, etc. What else do you think they're looking for here then for their last pick while we wait for the other phases to go by?
For newbie?
Yeah.
It's hard to say because they've already committed to these cores so early.
Right.
So it's got to be what I imagine more of a support at the end, someone who could also help out and assist getting things set up, or even being able to
I
shut
think they
down
need
the utility of
a
VG.
mech carrier. Like,
Bounty is a mech carrier nowadays.
yeah, I think if his main goal is to disrupt the Sand King, though, they're also trying to push towers, you're not going to get any track gold. I think.
I think the Clockwork might. We've seen Clockwork builds. They build mech on the Chinese teams on Clockwork. So, if you are really looking towards to be more aggressive early on, I mean, it's a possibility, but it's not the strongest build on Clockwork, because personally I feel like the Blade Mail build is much better. But if, like what Ben is saying, they are in the rhythm of pushing and they feel they are ready to take the game as fast as possible, Clockwork can actually build a mech in that sense. I mean, but I think it's very unlikely they will do it, but it's just an option they have.
Are we fully committed that this is going to be a greedy support Sand King and not an off-lane Ice Sand King? I was actually kind of surprised they passed over something like a Rubik, something VG Gaming play very often.
Originally, maybe they were actually planning to have it as a greedy support, but seeing the Bounty Hunter, I guess there's a chance where, okay, guys, this might not work well, so they're actually going to just put it on the off-lane. I mean, it's possible.
The Rubik's also good.
I mean, they have options with Queen of Pain, Clockwork. He's obviously a 4-staff candidate, and he works very well in dealing with the cogs. Dragon Form is awesome. Track, all great options for Rubik. I thought that would be something they go for.
I think their priorities right now concerned with getting Sand King Blink ASAP and trying not to give Bounty Hunter too much.
Do you like it if they finish the lineup with something like a Spirit Breaker to make space, so the Sand King has actually a lot of time to jungle and just get the blink? Because let's say, for example, if the bounty goes into the jungle, Sand King is there, and there's a Spirit Breaker on the team, he can always just come towards the Sand King's assistant at any moment during the laning phase.
They actually banned out there.
Yeah, they did ban out the Rubik from the side of Newbie, but the Spirit Breaker is something we discussed a number of times, and whoa, Silence coming out.